Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Today in part 3 of our AZ-900 updated exam Q&A series, I've got 35 questions on AZ-900 covering the new course content and some of your previous doubt questions. It is worth mentioning about our previously hugely successful series on AZ-900, the thumbnail for which is now visible on the screen and the link is shared both in the I button on the top right corner and in the description box below. Please make a point that this previous series is still quite relevant and you must watch it along with this new series to make sure that you cover the entire course content on AZ-900, including the changes done in May 2022. And friends, a big thanks from the Tech Blackboard team. Please keep showing your love by pressing the like button, subscribing to the channel, and help us reach all the Azure cloud enthusiasts like you. In this new series, we have already covered 65 very latest questions in two parts. And in case you have missed watching part 1 and part 2, the links are available in the description box. And in case you love learning in the offline mode, then here is a giveaway from my side. I will give away a free PDF file containing all the 35 questions covered in part 3. And for that, you have to tell me the correct answer for question number 70, question number 80, 90 and question number 100. And as always, all the answers to all these 4 questions are available in this video itself. So let's begin our part 3. So let's begin our part 3 with question number 66. The question says that you need to ensure that when Azure Active Directory users connect to Azure AD from the internet by using anonymous IP address, the users are prompted to automatically change their password. Which Azure service should you use? The important keyword here is anonymous IP address. So keep this in mind because this will help you relate the answer when we go to the Microsoft documentation. For now, the options given are Azure AD Connect Health or Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. The third option is Azure Advanced Threat Protection or ATP. And the fourth one is Azure AD Identity Protection. The correct answer for this question is option D, Azure AD Identity Protection. Now let me take you to the Microsoft documentation, but before that, keep in mind anonymous IP address. So here is the Microsoft documentation that talks more on what is identity protection. You can read in the first line itself that identity protection is a tool that allows organizations to accomplish 3 key tasks. The 3 key tasks are automate the detection and remediation of identity-based risk, investigate risk using data in the portal, and the third key task is export risk detection data to your SIEM. And in this very documentation, if you will scroll down a little more, you will reach to this section which says risk detection and remediation. Here you can read that identity protection identifies risk of many types, and that includes anonymous IP address use. And this is exactly what is given in our question as well. So you can read a lot about identity protection in this page. The link for this page is available in the description box. Now let's move to the other question, question number 67. The question says that which 2 types of customers are eligible to use Azure government to develop a cloud solution. Each correct answer presents a complete solution. You have to note that each correct selection is worth 1 point. The options given are a Canadian government contractor, a European government contractor, a United States government entity or United States government contractor. The last one is a European government entity. The correct answer for this question is option C and option D. If you remember, in part 2 of this series, we covered a lot on Azure government. Not only that, we also covered Azure China. So if you are looking for more details on Azure government or Azure China, then please go back to the part 2. But for now, a quick exam tip is whenever the question is asking about Azure government, then always be sure that Azure government always relates to the United States. Moving on with question number 68, the question says that you plan to migrate a web application to Azure. The web application is accessed by external users. Now you need to recommend a cloud deployment solution to minimize the amount of administrative efforts used to manage the web application. What should you include in the recommendation? Your options are infrastructure as a service, database as a service, software as a service, or platform as a service. The correct answer for this question is option D, platform as a service. And the reason is normally the web application only need a platform to be hosted and to run. That's why we have chosen platform as a service. Now friends, few days back I made a video on the differences between infrastructure as a service, software as a service and platform as a service. It's very important to understand the difference between these three because this will help you create the solution and choose the right services. So I strongly recommend to watch this video which is now appearing on the screen. The link is also available in the I button on the top right corner and in the description box. Let's move to question number 69. The question number 69 says, what can Azure Information Protection encrypt? Can it encrypt network traffic or documents and email messages, or can it encrypt an Azure storage account or an Azure SQL database? The correct answer for this question is option B. You can use Azure Information Protection to encrypt documents and email messages. Now let's move to question number 70. The question says that what should you use to evaluate whether your company's Azure environment meets the regulatory requirement? Your options are the Knowledge Center, the Advisor Blade from the Azure portal, or the Compliance Manager from the Security Trust portal, or the last option is the Security Center Blade from the Azure portal. The correct answer for this question is option D, the Security Center Blade from the Azure portal. Let me give you a little more detail on this one. So Azure Security Center helps you prevent, detect and respond to the threats with increased visibility into and control over security of your Azure resources. So it also provides you with integrated security monitoring and policy management across your subscription, and also helps you detect threats that might otherwise go unnoticed. Additionally, it works with the broad ecosystems of security solution. In order to access Security Center, you have to sign into Azure portal, then you have to browse the services, and then you have to look for the Security Center. And that's how you access Security Center Blade from Azure portal. Now let's move to question number 71. The question says that you have an Azure virtual network named VNet1 in a resource group named RG1. Now the question says that you assign an Azure policy specifying that virtual networks are not an allowed resource type in RG1. So basically you are stopping creation of virtual network in resource type which is called RG1. Now the question says that VNet1 is deleted automatically. So you have to review this underlined statement and you have to tell whether it's a correct statement or do you need to change the statement to make it correct. And your options are no change needed, is moved automatically to another resource group, continues to function normally, or the last option is now a read-only object. The correct answer for this question is option C, continues to function normally. Now let's move to question number 72, which is a true or false kind of question. Reading the question says that Azure Firewall will encrypt all the traffic sent from Azure to the internet. Is it a true or a false statement? The correct answer for this question is that this is a false statement. So Azure Firewall basically is used to allow or block traffic based on source destination IP address, ports or protocol. Moving ahead with question number 73, it says a network security group or NSG will encrypt all the traffic sent from Azure to the internet. The correct answer for this question again is a false, and this is because network security group does not encrypt network traffic. It actually works in a similar way as the firewall, so it allows or block the traffic based on source or destination IP address, ports or protocol, similar to what we saw in question number 72. And with that, let's move to question number 74. And this one says that Azure virtual machines that run on Windows Server 2016 can encrypt network traffic sent to the internet, whether it's a true or it's a false statement. The correct answer for this question is false. See, Windows Server does come with a VPN client and it also supports other encryption methods such as IPsec encryption or SSL or TLS. However, as I understand, the virtual machine could not encrypt the traffic to an internet host that is not configured to require the encryption. So little confusing question as not all the dots are given in the question to join and give the correct answer. To help you further, this is the Microsoft documentation that you can refer and understand more on Azure data security and encryption best practices. The link for this page is also available in the description box. So it would be really interesting for me if you share your thoughts on this question in the comment section, and then we can have an engaging discussion over this question, and surely this will benefit all our viewers. Now let's move to the question number 75. The question says that which of the following describes platform as a service? Your options are: users are responsible for purchasing, installing, configuring, and managing their own software, operating system, middleware, and application. The second option is: users create and deploy applications quickly without having to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure. The third option is: users pay an annual or monthly subscription. The correct answer for this question is option B, where users can create and deploy applications quickly without having to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure. Now let's do some dragging and dropping in question number 76. In this question, you are given with some of the Azure services on the left hand side. Then on the right hand side, you can say there is a statement or there is a definition given which you have to match with the Azure services. So let's read the first statement. It says provides a digital online assistant that provides speech support. The correct answer for this question is Azure Bot Service. The second statement says uses past training to provide prediction that have high probability. The correct Azure service that matches this one is Azure Machine Learning. Then we have some service that provides serverless computing functionalities. The correct service matching this one is Azure Functions. And then we have processes data from millions of sensors. The correct service that matches this one is Azure IoT Hub. Now friends, these questions are not only interesting but also very important from the exam point of view, because not only they will let you understand a lot of Microsoft Azure services in one shot, but also will help you understand a lot of Azure services when you are actually working on Microsoft Azure. Now let's move to question number 77. The question says that your company has an Azure environment that contains resources in several regions. A company policy states that administrators must only be allowed to create additional Azure resources in a region in the country where their office is located. Now you need to create the Azure resource that must be used to meet the policy requirement. What should you create? Your options are read-only log, an Azure policy, a management group, or a reservation. The correct answer for this question is option B, an Azure policy. Now let me give you a little more detail on Azure policy. So Azure policy is a service in Azure that you use to create, assign, and manage policies. These policies enforce different rules and effect over your resource, so the resource stay compliant with your corporate standards and service level agreements. Azure policy meets this need by evaluating your resources for non-compliance with assigned policies. For example, you can have a policy that allow only a certain SKU size of virtual machine in your environment. Once this policy is implemented, new and existing resources are evaluated for compliance. With the right type of policy, existing resource can be brought into compliance. Hopefully, this will help you understanding Azure policy, which is one of very important services in Microsoft Azure. Now let's move to question number 78, and this one says that you need to configure an Azure solution that meets the following requirement. The first requirement is that it should secure websites from attacks, and the second requirement is that it should generate reports that contain details of attempted attacks. What should you include in the solution? Your options are Azure Firewall, Azure Network Security Group, Azure Information Protection, or DDoS Protection. The correct answer for this question is option D, DDoS Protection. And here is a quick explanation on DDoS. DDoS, which is actually distributed denial of service attacks, are some of the largest availability and security concerns facing customers that are moving their applications to the cloud. A DDoS attack attempts to exhaust an application's resources, making the application unavailable to the legitimate users. DDoS attacks can be targeted at any endpoint that is publicly reachable through the internet. So if you are working with any solution that has public endpoint, you must consider DDoS attack and architect your solution accordingly. Now let's move to the next question, question number 79. The question says that your company has data centers in Los Angeles and New York. The company has Microsoft Azure subscription. You are configuring the two data centers as GeoCluster sites for site resiliency. You need to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option. You have the following data storage requirement. The first requirement is that data must be stored on multiple nodes. The second one is data must be stored on nodes in separate geographical locations. The third requirement is data can be read from the secondary location as well as from the primary location. Which of the following Azure stored redundancy options should you recommend? Your options are geo-redundant storage, read-only geo-redundant storage, zone redundant storage, or locally redundant storage. The correct answer for this question is option B, read-only geo-redundant storage. Now friends, in our last series on AZ-900, many of you asked me a question that why to choose read-only geo-redundant storage over geo-redundant storage, even if read-only geo-redundant storage is little costlier. Now here you have to understand that in case of geo-redundant storage, the second region cannot be accessed or read from until the storage account fails over. On the other hand, the RAGRS or read-only geo-redundant storage allows you to have higher read availability for your storage account by providing read-only access to the data replicated to the secondary location. So once you have enabled this feature, the secondary location may be used to achieve higher availability in the event the data is not available in the primary region. And that's exactly one of the requirements of this question. So this is the logic behind choosing read-only geo-redundant storage over geo-redundant storage. In case you still have any confusion on this question, do let me know in the comment section. But before moving to the next question, let me give you Microsoft documentation that you can refer to understand all of these storages given here in the question. So this is the Microsoft documentation where you can read all about the Azure storage redundancy. And this is very important to understand. High availability is one of the key aspects of any good solution in Microsoft Azure or any other cloud solution. Now let's move to question number 80. The question says that you are building an application using virtual machine in Azure. As a security requirement, it is necessary to apply Azure multi-factor authentication based on certain condition. Which Azure service should you use? Your options are Azure Monitor, Azure Advanced Threat Protection, Azure Active Directory ID Protection, or Azure Security Center. The correct answer for this question is option C, Azure Active ID Protection. Now let me give you a little more details on all the services listed here in the question. Azure Monitor, which is the incorrect option because this is for collecting what is known as Azure monitoring data. It has nothing to do with Azure multi-factor authentication. Moving on with Azure Advanced Threat Protection, this is incorrect because it is used to monitor and analyze user activity as information across the network such as permissions and group membership. And as you can see, this also is not related to Azure multi-factor authentication. Moving on with Azure Active Directory ID Protection, which is a correct answer because this allows you to apply MFA with conditions. And that's what our question is also asking, that we have to implement Azure multi-factor authentication based on certain conditions. And it is also used to detect risks such as anonymous IP address logins, unfamiliar sign-ins, and credentials leak. Hopefully, this makes you clear why we have chosen Azure Active Directory ID Protection as an answer to this question. Moving on with Azure Security Center. So basically, Azure Security Center is an integrated infrastructure security management system that enhances security structure of data center. It's an advanced threat protection feature that protects your entire hybrid workload both on cloud and on premises. With this option, you cannot, however, use MFA or multi-factor authentication. Friends, if you have liked the questions so far, please give a like to this video, subscribe to the channel, and share these videos with anyone who is learning Azure. Now let's jump to question number 81. The question says an Azure administrator plans to run PowerShell script that creates Azure resources. You need to recommend which computer configuration to use to run the script. Which three computers can run the script? Each answer presents a complete solution and each correct selection is worth 1 point. Your options are given here. Option A is a computer that runs Windows 10 and has Azure PowerShell module installed. Option B is a computer that runs Mac OS and has PowerShell Core 6.0 installed. Option C is a computer that runs on Linux and has Azure PowerShell module installed. Option D is a computer that runs Linux and has Azure CLI tool installed. And option E is a computer that runs Chrome OS and uses Azure Cloud Shell. The correct three answer for this question is option A, option C, and option D. Now let me give you a little bit of explanation for each answer. So in option A, which is a correct option, we already have Azure PowerShell module installed, and that's why we can run the script. Coming to the option B with Mac OS and PowerShell Core 6.0 installed, however, we are missing with Azure PowerShell module. So PowerShell Core 6.0 itself is not enough. Moving on with option C, which is a correct option, here we have PowerShell module installed and thus we can run the script. Coming to the option D, here we have Linux and we have Azure CLI. This combination itself is not enough to run the script. And then we have option E, which has Chrome OS and that uses Azure Cloud Shell. And from the Azure Cloud Shell, you can easily execute Azure PowerShell commandlets. So these were the reason why we have chosen option A, option C, and option E. Now let's move to question number 82. The question says that your Azure environment contains multiple Azure virtual machines. You need to ensure that a virtual machine named VM1 is accessible from the internet over HTTP. What are the two possible solutions? Each correct answer presents a complete solution and each correct selection is worth 1 point. Your options are modify an Azure Traffic Manager profile, modify a network security group, modify a DDoS protection plan, or modify an Azure firewall. The correct answer for this question is option B and option D. Now let me give you a little bit more details on Azure Network Security Group. So Azure Network Security Group acts as a firewall and you can attach NSG to a virtual network or individual subnet within the virtual network. Additionally, you can also attach NSG to a network interface assigned to a virtual machine. Also, it's important that you note that you can use NSG within a virtual network to restrict traffic between resources such as virtual machines and subnets. Network Security Group and Azure Firewall are two very important concepts when it comes to security of your virtual machines, network, and subnets. Moving on with question number 83, which is a yes-no kind of question. And here, let's read the first statement. The first statement says each Azure subscription can contain multiple account administrator. You have to tell whether it's a yes or it's a no. The correct answer for this question is no. Now let me give you all the answers first and then I will give you my logic behind choosing these answers. So let's read the second statement which says each Azure subscription can be managed by using a Microsoft account only. The correct answer for this is no. Moving on with the third statement, we have an Azure resource group contains multiple Azure subscription. The correct answer for this one is also no. And here comes the logic for each of the statement. So in the first one, I have given the answer as no, and the reason is account administrator. So if I go with the Microsoft documentation, it says that you can have one account administrator and one service administrator. You can also have lot of co-administrator per subscription. Here it's important that we are talking about account administrator, which can only be one, and that's why I have chosen no for this statement. Then for the second statement, my logic is that you need an Azure Active Directory account to manage a subscription, not a Microsoft account. So an account is actually created in Azure Active Directory when you create the subscription. Further, the accounts can be created in Azure Active Directory to manage the subscription. Then for the third statement, which is also marked as no, my logic is that resource groups are logical containers for Azure resources. However, resource group do not contain subscription. It's actually the vice versa. Subscription contains the resource group, and that's why I have marked this as no. Now friends, you will find other versions of answers on many other sites for these statements. And I would really like to understand what are your logic for these statements. You can surely comment your thoughts on these statements in the comment section. Now let's move to question number 84, which says that which of the following provides a command platform for deploying objects to your cloud infrastructure and maintaining consistency throughout your Azure environment. Your options are Azure Policy, Azure Resource Group, Azure Resource Manager, or Management Group. The correct answer for this question is option C, Azure Resource Manager. And here is a quick detail on Azure Resource Manager, which is a service that provides a management layer that allows you to create, update, delete Azure resources, all while maintaining consistency across your Azure environment. And that's exactly what our question is also looking for. Moving on with question number 85. This one says that which of the following is the logical unit of Azure services that links to an Azure account? Options are Azure subscription, management group, or resource group. The correct answer for this question is option A, Azure subscription. And here comes our question number 86, which says which of the following can be used to help you enforce resource tagging so you can manage billing? Your options are Azure Policy, Azure Service Health, or Compliance Manager. The correct answer for this one is option A, Azure Policy. Quickly jumping to question number 87, which says which of the following refers to the spending money upfront and then deducting expense over the time? Your options are capital expenditure, operational expenditure, or supply and demand. The correct answer for this one is capital expenditure. We have already discussed capital expenditure or CapEx and operational expenditure or OpEx in our previous parts in quite some detail. However, a quick reference for you that whenever it's a capital expenditure, it means that you are referring to the expense which is upfront. For example, you are creating your own data center. In this case, you incur a huge upfront expenditure whenever you are setting up your data center. Coming to the operational expenditure, keep in mind whenever we are talking about operational expenditure, it's a recurring cost. For example, you pay for your mobile bills or your electricity bill or maybe your Netflix or Amazon Prime subscription. All these are example of operational expenditure. The keyword for operational expenditure is recurring cost. Now let's move to question number 88, and it says that from the choices below, which is one advantage of moving your infrastructure to Azure? The first one is that the move reduces capital expenditure, or it reduces operational expenditure, or the third option is that the move allows for complete control over infrastructure resources. And the correct answer for this question is option A, that the move reduces your capital expenditure. And I have explained this many times that the core essence to moving to Azure cloud or any other cloud is operational expenditure. So cloud services let you reduce your capital expenditure to a great extent and then move from capital expenditure to operational expenditure. And here comes our question number 89, that says which cloud model provides the greatest degree of ownership and control? Your options are hybrid, private, or public. The correct answer is obviously private cloud. Coming to question number 90, it says that which cloud model provides greatest degree of flexibility? The correct answer for this question is hybrid cloud. Please mind the difference between both the questions. In question number 89, we were talking about greatest degree of ownership and control. However, in question number 90, we are talking about greatest degree of flexibility, and that's why we have chosen hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is a combination of both public and private cloud, and that's why it offers greater degree of flexibility. Looking at the importance of capital expenditure and operational expenditure, let's take some quick questions and understand when to choose capital expenditure and when to choose operational expenditure. Here comes the question 91, and that says that Azure pay-as-you-go pricing is an example of capital expenditure. The correct answer for this one is false because Azure pay-as-you-go is a operational expenditure. Then moving on with question number 92, Azure Reserved Virtual Machine instances are an example of operational expenditure. The correct answer for this one is false because Azure Reserved Virtual Machine are capital expenditure. In case of Azure Reserved Virtual Machine, you reserve virtual machines for a longer period of time and thereby you get some discounts on the pricing of the virtual machine. So in case of Azure Reserved Virtual Machine, you are paying upfront for a longer period of time. And that's why it's a capital expenditure and not operational expenditure. Moving on with question number 93, it says that deploying your own data center is an example of capital expenditure. The correct answer for this question is true. Now let's move to question number 94, and this one says that paying electricity for your data center is an example of operational expenditure. The correct answer for this one is true. And this is because paying electricity bill for your data center is a recurring cost. You have to pay electricity bill month on month. So it's a repeated cost and that's why it categorized as operational expenditure. Now let's jump to question number 95. This one says that you have an Azure environment that contains multiple Azure virtual machines. You plan to implement a solution that enables the client computers on your on-premises network to communicate to the Azure virtual machine. You need to recommend which Azure resources must be created for the planned solution. So basically you have to choose two Azure resources for your recommendation. Your options are a virtual network gateway, a load balancer, an application gateway, a virtual network, and the last one is a gateway subnet. The correct answer for this question is option A, a virtual network gateway, and option E, a gateway subnet. Now let's move to question number 96. This one says that your company is planning to move from on-premises environment to Azure, and you have decided to develop your application using Docker as a development environment. So which of the following is the best service to use for this scenario? Your options are Azure App Service, Azure Container Instances, Azure Functions, or Azure Virtual Machine. The correct answer is very obviously Azure Container Service. A little bit more on Azure Container Service, which is a service that runs Docker containers on demand within your Azure environment. It can operate inside a separate container without orchestration and run event-driven application, deploy quickly from container deployment pipeline, and run the data processing and build jobs. Azure Container or container in general are quite interesting and very much in demand these days in the market, a must read for every cloud enthusiast. And with that, let's move to question number 97. And this one says that you can use Azure policy to download published audit reports and how Microsoft builds and operates its cloud services. You need to tell whether it's true or false. The correct answer that it is a false statement. So let's see what is the correct Microsoft service. For that, let's read the question number 98. It says that you can use Service Trust Portal to download published audit reports and how Microsoft builds and operates its cloud services. And this time, this one is a true statement. And now comes question number 99. Choose an international organization that develops international standards for privacy and compliance. Your options are international governmental and defense agencies, GDPR, International Civil Defense Organization, and the last one is International Organization for Standardization, or better known as ISO. And I'm hopeful you have already guessed the answer, which is option D, International Organization for Standardization. And now here on your screen is question number 100, which is the last question for today in our part 3 of our AZ-900 updated Q&A series. I am collecting more questions to cover the entire updated course content, and hopefully I will release one more part. But for now, let's read question number 100. You need to identify the type of failure for which an Azure availability zone can be used to protect access to Azure services. What should you identify? Your options are a storage failure, an Azure region failure, a physical server failure, or an Azure data center failure. The correct answer for this question is option D, an Azure data center failure. So today in part 3, we covered 35 interesting questions. I'm sure that while preparing for AZ-900, you would already have some unclear or unanswered questions. So go ahead and share all those doubtful questions in the comment section, and you will get the answer not only from us, but also from the strong viewer community on the Tech Blackboard channel. And please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video as a lot of people are looking forward to start their career on Azure Cloud. You can also join us on other social media platforms. The details are given in the description box. I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.
If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you, and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.